My grandmother was expert on canning food, and so is my mother. And if you saw my aunt's food pantry, you wouldn't believe your eyes. They are all Estonian women, and like most Estonians, they are experts at preserving food. So this is a story about canning and kitchen talk. Both essentials for surviving in the Soviet system, because it wasn't only your earthly body that needed nurturing, but your soul and spirit as well. And in a world where your neighbor could also be your enemy, ready to turn you into the authorities at a moment's notice, there was no safer place than your own kitchen. Soviet Union kitchens were hotbeds for both culture and dissent. Why the kitchen, you might wonder? Why not restaurants, pubs, nightclubs? Why not parks or universities? But in the Soviet Union, there were not many places where you could meet and freely speak your mind, let alone demonstrate. Besides, it wouldn't have been very smart to have gathered in public anyway, as there was always someone keeping an eye on who was meeting who. The KGB had eyes and ears everywhere. If you wanted to talk about politics, your workplace was not good for that either, and you couldn't have a critical conversation over the phone, nor trust the Soviet postal service. You had to meet face to face, but where? In the kitchen. The kitchen remained untouched by the regime, and that's what kept culture and hidden memories alive, as the memories of those whom Soviet rule considered persona non grata were passed on from one generation to the next. And in those kitchens, there was always something pickled to serve. Pickled cucumbers, canned apples, anecdotes about the leaders would be shared over sprat and pickled tomatoes. And if you were to meet your friends for some serious political debate, vodka would be served as well, along with something sour. The kitchen was a place for laughter and humor, exchanging underground tapes and forbidden literature and contraband, but it was also a place where better future was built, where the spirit and dreams and hopes were kept alive decade after decade behind the solid protection of barricades built out of canned foods. And that is what I had in mind when I began doing my Corona Kitchen live on social media, sharing book recommendations and recipes. When I noticed that people here in Finland were stockpiling canned foods, that consumers' habits were changing and the demand for freezers was getting higher, the direction I wanted to go in was decided. Finns are not that into preserving food. Not since the war, but in former Soviet states you had to have adequate supplies at home, as the Soviet Union always had problems with their food distribution, and rationing is something I remember very well. Using preserved food was part of normal life back then, and now it's coming back in Finland too. That is why my Corona Kitchen focuses on ingredients with long shelf lives, while at the same time giving me the opportunity to present flavors from Eastern and Baltic kitchen. Often a good choice when making dishes from long-lasting ingredients, and therefore well suited in this Corona season. I've had so much fun interacting with the readers who've watched the show, and I think they've enjoyed it too. Cooking with people I don't know is like breaking bread. It's something that brings us together, just like sharing stories does. It's also something ordinary in a very unstable world, and we do need the ordinary. We are all in this together, facing a world where we have to distance ourselves from public life, and even though the reasons for it are very different than in the Soviet Union, the isolation itself doesn't feel that different. The fact that public life is now associated with danger doesn't feel that dissimilar either. And so I'm reminded of the importance of the kitchen and the stories shared there, the unifying possibilities they offer in a world where your own kitchen is once again, the safest place to be. That is why I wanted to stream live from my own kitchen, to connect with other people staying in their kitchens, cooking alone or with their families, and open up a window to the world with the help of books. Because it's not only your body that needs nurturing, but your soul and spirit. I was brought up in a world where both needs were nourished in the kitchen, and I know it works. Nations can survive thanks to kitchen talk. Soviet life was often absurd and surreal, but kitchen talk kept us grounded. Above all, it kept us sane.